Well, hello. It's me back for an extra stitch. Great to have you along. And I'm down in the office today. I normally film my extra stitches upstairs in the little annex to the dining room. But we've got some extra blessings in the house these days. As I said before, we have a new puppy. And he, being a puppy, is a little bit prone to being boisterous, especially when his daddy's around. He just wants to play. He'll quite happily sort of go off and do the sleeping thing when he's, when he wants to and all that sort of stuff. But where my chair normally is when I'm speaking to you in an extra stitch, he can see me. He can see me, so he wouldn't be happy. So if you do hear some noise, it's either the dog or it's Angus the tortoise. But between them, not conducive for filming. But here we are, and it's so good to see you. I'm sort of overdue a proper episode, but I keep saying this, but these last few months actually have just been full of busyness. Managed to get a bit of filming in for you over the summer of various events and bits and pieces that I've been doing. But it's a while since we've had a good proper episode. And as I said before, there's not a lot of new knitting going on. I'm currently sitting knitting here still on the Dustin sweater. I'm making some progress with that. But it's been a slow work, mainly because, as I say, dog taking extra knitting time. Everyone's been getting back to school after the summer holiday. Sannox has been busy with all the arty things that I showed you in the last main episode. We've got a lot of guests coming through there, and other life and ministry and doctorate studies and various things like that have all been going on. And of course, I recently was on talking to you about the conclusion of the Beanie Along 2023, and I've been overwhelmed by the amount of you who have been knitting away over those summer months, using up all your stash, and some of those beanies are starting to come in, which is really lovely. So on the previous video, a little thank you video, in the comments of that, there's all the places where you can send your beanies. If you're in the UK, there's an address on there to send them to here, to the Isle of Arran, where I'll get them. And then the plan is that I will distribute them en masse at some point, and hopefully get some footage in of some of the projects that may be benefiting from your wonderful knitted beanies. There are addresses in Europe, in Canada, in the United States, a few addresses in the United States, Australia, etc., etc. So if you took part, again, thank you, and I hope you can find an address. Well, so this is just a quiet Monday afternoon for an extra stitch, just after a very busy weekend. The first weekend of the month is always particularly busy, because on the first Saturday of the month, we have a special event up at the retreat centre, which is usually a bit of singing and usually a talk, and usually by me. We do have the occasional guest speaker, but I was up there doing that this weekend. And then the first Sunday, well, we have a communion service at church, so that's always something extra. And I play in the local brass band. We're okay. I've probably mentioned that before. We're okay. We're not brilliant. We do our bit. But we were playing up at Nordic Castle, very grand, entertaining the unsuspected tea drinkers outside the cafe. They may have been planning for a nice quiet cup of tea after a Sunday afternoon looking around Nordic Castle, but they got various marches and Scottish tunes and show tunes and film movie soundtracks and whatever. They got the whole lot basically, but that was good. And then on a Sunday late afternoon, once a month, there's a sort of service that's held by one of the other churches, just once a month, which we try and support here on the island. We kind of stick together and support one another. But then last night I had the absolute joy of going, after the free church service, going to our local theatre, which is actually based in our local high school. It's a completely new build, and they built a community, all sorts of community facilities in there. So there's a dance studio, there's a theatre, adjustable theatre, as well as a gym and various other things, and the school, of course. But last night, there was a community choir just set up for this particular purpose, and they were singing Fauré's Requiem. Not a piece of music that I'm particularly familiar with, but beautiful nonetheless. And what they do is they have, once a year, as part of a festival called the McClellan Festival, they have a conductor, a pianist, and 4 or 5 soloists come over from mainland Scotland, from it used to be called the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama, but I think it's now called the Scottish Conservatoire. And so they had some wonderful young soloists, vocal soloists over, who sung the vocal parts, the vocal solos of Fauré's Requiem, along with the chorus, but also sang some of the pieces from their sort of final performance for graduating from the conservatoire. So really great. I mean, these are young people, early 20s, but beautiful voices, just superb. And, huge kudos to the local folks who were able to, in the space of a couple of days, not people who sing a lot together at all, but just were able to come together and put on an amazing performance. Really moving, sublime music, really beautiful. So that was the weekend. So I'm really just sort of coming off the back of that weekend, finding myself with a little bit of space on Monday afternoon to come and have a blether, have a chat with you. Of course, next weekend, you may remember me saying that from the 8th to the 10th of September, that's when we have our second Sannox Stitches retreat happening up at Sannox. So we've got folks coming from the States, some of you folks, and folks coming from various places in Scotland, coming with their knitting and with their crochet and with their spinning and with their all sorts of things, coming together just for a few relaxed days up at Sannox. And what a beautiful week it is. I mean, we are into September now, and although things are starting to get a little bit cooler here, we've actually had a pretty washout of a summer. We've had rain all the way through July, all the way through August, and now that it's summer and all the children have gone back to school, we've got some glorious weather. Now, glorious for us is about 19, 20 degrees with some sunshine. That's glorious for us. But that's what we're having this week. So it's absolutely beautiful on the island. We still have a fair few tourists around at this time of the year, which is nice. There's a nice buzz to the place. So yeah, it's looking really lovely for the weekend of Sannox Stitches, and just really looking forward to meeting new friends, see what everyone's knitting, and we'll have a chance to do a shared project together, probably weaving again. We did that last time. It was a great project, and especially great for those that have never tried weaving before. It was my first attempt at learning how to weave, and absolutely loved it. I became a little bit addicted to it, to be honest. So weaving has become a little bit of a theme up at Sannox, and we recently had those events that I showed you where we had the artists doing workshops, and there was fused glass workshops and watercolour adventure workshops and various things. We also had a loom set up, and everyone who came along during the course of those open days and to the Arran Open Studios weekend had a chance to have a go at the loom. And what we've managed to produce is this beautiful scarf. Look at this. I'm totally amazed at this. Look at that. So this has been made by, probably tens of visitors who have come through the centre. There's some lovely combinations of colours. You can't quite see them fully. There's some browns in there. There's obviously orange, some reds, some whites. And that's pretty much, there's some darker, I think that might be even a sort of black sort of shade there for that. And so people just come in, people who have never woven before, but have just had a chance to put in a few lines and I've produced this beautiful scarf, which sadly for me, we're currently in the process of having a little bit of a silent auction for it. So if you fancy getting yourself a woven 100% woolen scarf made by the visitors to Sannox recently, you can look out Sannox social media, Facebook and Instagram, and we're having a silent auction. If you want to buy it, send in what you're willing to pay for it, and we'll give you it. What the lovely thing about it is this white piece here, I don't know if you can see it, it's slightly thicker. This is wool that was spun by my colleague at Sannox, Heidi. And basically she just picked up some fleece from the local fields, washed it and processed it and spun it with a little spindle. And so we've even got woven in to the whole work some fleece from the local fields, the sheep that keep us company day by day up there at Sannox. It was a great time up at the Open Studios. I had some what did I do? I did some workshops. We did some basic learn how to knit workshops. We did some come and learn how to do magic loop. And some very brave folks attempted that for the first time. For some folks, it was their first time using a circular needle, a cable needle. It's just not very common here, I find, certainly amongst local traditional knitters. Using cable needles is not really a very popular thing. But I was able to introduce that to a couple of people, which was fantastic. And then on the Sunday afternoon of that weekend, I did some beginners fair isle, which was great fun. And there was just a great opportunity to teach some very simple skills. There was nothing complicated, and had a wonderful opportunity to meet some folks on the island that I hadn't yet met, which that was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. But as part of the do up there, I had a few of my knits on not for sale, but just on show, just to sort of show the kind of things that I do as I was teaching the workshops. And actually there's some things that I found that I discovered that I hadn't actually shown you before. And so I thought, it's about time that I showed you some of these, because actually some of them represent some fairly significant steps along the way as far as my own knitting journey is concerned. Now what I have here, this the colours is sort of greeny jade, I don't know what you would call that, sort of sea green sort of thing. But this is I don't know if you can see it, it's got a hood, it's a hooded jumper really. And this was one of the first garments that I actually knitted. I don't know if you can see it all in there. So it has this pocket that's built in, and this was a very clever thing because it's the way it's knitted. It's seamed into the to the front of the jumper, although this is a separate piece. And it's a lovely little pocket at the front there. It was knitted with my daughter in mind, but being much more stylistically attuned than I am, the colour just wasn't something that she was ever going to wear, although she did try it on to humour me. But it was one of the first garments I ever did, as in this kind of garment. I have to say this hood was particularly difficult because it was knit up both sides, and then you had to all sorts of things that was really beyond me at the time. Probably if I was doing this garment now, it would be much more successful because I'd have all the skills that went into this I probably now have off hat. But this was a real learning piece, which was probably why my daughter didn't want to make it, because you'll notice that when I started to sew up the shoulder, I put the outward stitches on the wrong side on this arm, because as you see, actually I managed to do it there as well. So it just wasn't very successful on the whole. But it's one of these pieces that sits around because it really is the first garment that I really managed to half successfully knit, especially with this little pocket. So that's it. The wool was can't remember what the name of the wool was. I'll put it on the bottom here. You should be able to read it. But it's got a little sort of speckle through it, so it's got yellow and red and blue and orange and all that sort of stuff. They come off fairly easy, but so that was that. I found that. So this is this is a garment that will probably never go anywhere. It's just one of those ones that's going to be in the pile. And we'll just sit there and I'll be able to say, that was the first garment I knitted. And that's probably all I'll have to say about it. The other thing that I found was an interesting find. I can't remember if I showed you this before, but this piece here, this is actually crocheted, and this was my first learning attempt at using Tunisian crochet. I don't know if you can see the texture of that. I think it's a really pretty texture you can get with Tunisian crochet. This is just this is the sort of back side, and this here is the front. You can see just what a lovely texture that creates. It's quite a thick texture it creates when you're doing Tunisian crochet. And if you don't know, I haven't got one near me, but you do Tunisian crochet with a long crochet hook. So you basically got all of these stitches on the needle, and you sort of work through it by, it's like weaving, it's like knitting, it's like crochet, it's all those things all together. And so this is my first attempt at trying to do Tunisian crochet. So I found that it's quite nice. Again, it's not something that will ever go anywhere. It won't be for anyone. It won't do anything. It's just, that's what I tried in terms of getting used to Tunisian crochet. It was a really fun project, and actually really quick. I mean, you can crochet up something like that in the space of a couple of evenings. And I keep promising myself, when I've got time, that I'll go back and do more of that Tunisian crochet stuff. But best laid plans of mice and men gang after gley, said the great Robert Burns from just down the hill there. Yeah, so I found that. What else did I find? All sorts of things. I can't remember if I've ever showed you my daughter's Harry Potter scarf, which I did. I knitted this about 3 years ago, and my abiding memories of knitting this was that of blazing sunshine and sunburn on my solar panels. We had gone camping down in England somewhere, and it was absolutely sweltering. But my daughter had asked that before the winter came in, could she have a Harry Potter scarf? So that was it. It was in Gryffindor colours, if you're at all familiar with that. I have no idea. And just to finish it off, we got this nice little Gryffindor patch. That was what she wanted, with some nice tassels there. Now this is basically a tube. It was basically just knitting around like you would a hat, and then just stitched up at the end, which is actually quite neat. I'm quite impressed by that. A nice finish, and then some lovely little tassels. So she's proud as punch with that. She went into school with that a few times, and not only was she proud of the fact that it was a Harry Potter scarf, but she was also very proud of the fact that her daddy had knitted it. So that was that. And she just got her name on it there at the end. She put her name on it because I took it up to the weekend to display as part of the display of things that I'd knitted, and she wanted to make sure she got it back. So she stuck her name on it. So that was a Harry Potter scarf. What else did I find? I'm not sure what extra there was. You've seen most of the other stuff. I took my other Fair Isle hats and, all that sort of thing. I took my little sheepy I can't remember what you call it, I can't remember what you call it. I'll try and put it down at the bottom. Various things. I also found this. Now this, I have to confess, although this might look fairly impressive, it's actually useless because my Fair Isle here was absolutely too tight, and there's no way, unless you've got a particularly unusual shaped head, is this going to go anywhere near anybody's head. But this was actually a knit I did. It was a test knit. I'll put the name down here because I'm sure you can go and find the pattern complete and finished. This was just the colours that I chose. But actually, this was one of the major early attempts of doing colour work. And as I look at it now, as I say, there's lots of too much of tightness going on here. And there's a lot of bits where the tension just isn't right, where there's mistakes and all sorts of stuff. But I think I had to credit this as being, again, like some of these other pieces, some of the really key bits of knitting that I've done, which have given me skills to improve on, that I have then been able to develop and use like that. So again, it's not something that will ever go anywhere, but it's in the little suitcase here, just as things that I've knit that will actually be very valuable in what they've managed to tell me. Now, the other thing that I've managed to find again, I can't remember if I've shown you these before, possibly have flashed them by the screen on a live or something like that. But a few years back, Arne and Carlos, who are some of my favourite nitty YouTube people, brought out designs for mini Nordic sweaters. I think they did it as a sort of Advent knit-along type of thing. And so there's these little jumpers, which we would call them here in the UK. Again, Farewell patterns, sort of colour work patterns there. They're absolutely lovely, and they have numbers on them, because the idea is that you knit 23 or 24 of these. I think possibly 23, because I think Norwegians and Scandinavians tend to celebrate the main part of Christmas on the 24th of December, on Christmas, what we would call Christmas Eve. They probably call it Christmas Eve as well, but you know what I mean. So I think there's 23 of these, and these are the first two. Isn't that cute? These are the first two that I managed to knit, and the third one is actually in pieces in this rather delicious bag full of all sorts of wool, because I just haven't got on with them. But I have to say, yet again, I was knitting these when I had never knitted a raglan anything. I was still very early on in the day as far as colour work was concerned. And as per knitting in the round, I was still new at that as well. So these are actually, although they're a bit, what I would say, higgledy-piggledy and all over the place, for that stage of my knitting career, such as it is, they're quite impressive actually. And this brown one, I think this brown one, you can see the difference. Well, I can see the difference between the success of the first one and what I'd managed to do by the time the second one came along. So, as I say, there are at least 23 of those to knit. And there's been someone whose name I can't remember right now, so I apologise because I can't remember your name. But on Instagram, who's just managed to complete 23 of these. And every time I see that person posting pictures of her mini Nordic sweaters on Instagram, I just get this wave of guilt that flows right over me, knowing for a fact that I have a bag full of beautiful wool, with the intention of finishing 24. Now here's my plan, and you can hold me to this. What I want to do before we get into Advent of 2023 is knit another two, so that I can have number 1, number 2, number 3 and number 4. My thinking is that there are 4 Sundays in Advent, so I'm thinking if I can get the 4 knitted before the beginning of December, or even by halfway through December, before the third one has to be used, I think we can use one for each of the Sundays in Advent this year. We can put a little treat in there for all the family, and then we can have a turn on those Sundays of Advent, opening up one. So that's the challenge that I've set myself. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have 2 more of these Nordic sweaters. And in fact, I'm halfway there, because it says somewhere at the bottom of this bag is the next one. I'm not going to take it all out. But what I am going to do, however, is show you the wool that I'm using for this. This lovely blue yarn is one of the colourways by Caithness Yarns, a sort of indigenous, what do you call those things? Sheep. An indigenous sheep grower, keeper, shepherd, that's the word, shepherd, who makes lovely fleeces with his wool. And if you look back to my video where I went to the Scottish Yarn Producers Showcase, there's a little bit in there from Caithness Yarns. I bought 4 of these. There was a sort of creamy one, a blue one, a brown one, which is not, oh, there we are. That's the brown one. Natural, lovely, fleecy stuff in there. And I've been using that to do those. As well as that, I've been using some, this is some Sirdar something or other. It's got a little fleck in it, so it must be a sort of tweed or something like that. So I've been using those for these little sweaters. So I've got the bag there, and I keep it in my no frills knitting bag that I bought from Meg. So that is going to be one of my winter or sort of autumnal projects, to work and get 2 more of those little sweaters completed by the time Advent comes along. So that's the plan. Now, again, just a little bit more on the hats, because one of the exciting things at the moment is that having put out the addresses for folks to send their hats to, the UK folks are sending them all here to me, and then I'll take them to a project and hopefully get some footage of the project that we'll be supporting here in the UK. But lovely, some of the hats, like these are all the ones that I've done. So these are my contribution to the Beanie along. But just today, in the post, I've had a few parcels come along, and this one is from Mrs. I think it's Sue. Her first name is Mrs. Sue Brown, and Sue's been in touch on the old Instagram, telling me about all her various knits and exploits. So there we are, absolutely four beautiful little, let's get them arranged for you. So we've got a nice grey one there, a nice grey one, a nice blue one, and some lovely green ones. Thanks so much for those. And there was a little letter there, I missed it. So again, thank you so much. Yeah, Sue Brown from Darlington. So thank you so much for sending those in, Sue. I think that was all. No, there's another one. There's a red one as well. Thank you, Sue. And here we've got here. We've got another few. Oh, some lovely colours here. A little note. Let's see who it's from. This is from Christina. So we've got some lovely. That's a lovely grey brown colour there. Some lovely. That's like almost like a sort of sea blue. There's a little sort of green come through it. You can't quite see it on the screen there because of the light in here, but that's a beautiful colour. It's almost like a sea sort of emerald type colour. That's a lovely brown one. That's a nice big one. I can imagine some big chaps really enjoying that one, Christina. And then there's a lovely sort of pastel shade colours. And I say some of these are going to be going to, as well as homeless shelters, some of them will be going to places where elderly folks are served. So they won't necessarily all go to folks who are homeless. And there's another beautiful shade. It's a lighter blue than that other one. But it's actually some lovely colours coming through there. So thank you so much for that, Christina. And then one more come through the post today. It's very exciting getting this post. It's like Christmas. And who doesn't love a good unwrapping? So there we are. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. We've got 2 here. And we've got some 2 in a lovely grey with some nice coloured specks. So they're nice and subdued, but they've got those little specks and flashes of colour. It may actually be the same wool as that jumper I showed you. It may well be. So beautiful. 2 more beanies, and those 2 were from, who were they from? Anne. So thank you very much, Anne. And this is someone who's heard about the project to knit hats from Ruth at Ruth Loves to Knit. So thank you so much, Anne. And again, thank you so much to Ruth and to the other bloggers and whoever else who put out that I was doing the little beanie along. We've had some from the island as well, with some knitters here on the Isle of Arran who have been knitting away to support the project. So I'm sure that here on my UK collection point, we'll have some wonderful hats to have collected in. And I'm sure that wherever you are around the world, if you've been taking part and you're sending off your hats, I'm sure that they will be much appreciated. It would be lovely to have an idea of how many beanies we've managed to knit, but I have no idea really of how to do that. If they were all coming here to me, then I could just count them, but because they're going out to places all around the world and you're sending them directly to there, I'm probably never going to know how many we've actually knitted, but it's been great fun, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. I forgot to say in the last video, huge thanks to Meg again for giving and allowing us to use her simple beanie pattern, and I hope you've enjoyed that. Other people have said it's a nice therapeutic knit. It is. It's just 2 knit, 2 purl rib all the way round, and then a beautiful little shaping in the crown. I really enjoy it, and I've got to the stage with these beanies using that pattern where I've pretty much memorised them, so I know how to knit them without any problem at all. So I can take them everywhere. I can knit them on the ferry. I can knit them over lunchtime when I'm having my sandwich, watching the boat come in. I can sit and watch the telly and knit beanies for eternity because they're such an intuitive pattern as well. But a beautiful way that little the crown just comes together into that perfect peak. With that little sort of round gathering place at the top. And as I say, I've put some pom-poms on the top of mine, but again, most of you have just kept it simple, and that's what I had stated on the original instructions. We have to sort of spare a thought for those who find themselves in a situation where they're on the streets. It's not something that very many people choose. You don't grow up thinking, oh, I'm going to end up in the streets. You really don't. And from my experience of working with homeless people through the year, the only kind of visibility they want is when they need to know that there's someone there who will provide for them or point them to the next meal or just check up on them. But otherwise, they don't always want to be that obvious. It can be a really challenging thing. And if you're in the middle of a city, honestly, a really challenging life. There's many people in my own life over 25 or so years experience of working with people on the streets. People whose stories are sort of they're sort of imprinted on my heart and on my mind. Just precious people, but life has just dealt them the most horrendous hand. And so that is why I want to thank you. I want to thank you on the behalf of Elizabeth and Dave and Stuart and Christina and people that I've met over the years whose stories I remember, who aren't just receiving a simple hat, they're receiving a token of love and care and affection, and especially a handmade hat. Just the knowledge that someone would have made this for them and knowing that it was going to be given to someone who is really in need of it. So thank you so much for that. Well, this has just been a little bit of an extra stitch. I hope you've been able to just come along and enjoy a little bit of a sit and a little bit of a knit and a little bit of a chat while I've been rabbiting on here. I can hear Dougal the wonder dog upstairs starting to scratch a little bit, so he'll be wanting to go and wander around the garden. Angus the tortoise is scraping up in that corner, so he'll be wanting his latest installation of dandelions, which is his favourite, and rocket to go with it, and I could do with a cup of tea as well. So thank you so much for tuning in to this extra stitch. I continue to thank you for your support and your interest, and I'm really looking forward to, as we move into the autumn, getting back up to speed with some regular content. There's still so much more to show you on the island. I'm really going to try and focus on developing the things I'm knitting, making some real progress on the Dustlin sweater, getting those little Nordic sweaters done by the time Advent comes along, and then I'll see what else see what else is grabbing my fancy with regards to knitting. So there'll be more about all of that. But lovely to chat to you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all your support. It really is appreciated. Take care now. Martin leven de resta. Agus Beanach Jacket.